Hey there, this is Phil. Welcome back to the show. I am here with Sky Jitani.
Hi, Phil.
Hi, Sky. When was the last time you shaved?
Saturday.
Really?
Yeah.
It was a rough weekend?
Well, I had to shave for a funeral on Saturday, and Sunday I didn't.
That's a great way to start out the podcast.
I'm just saying.
Is there anything else? I hit a deer over the weekend.
You did?
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's 2 deaths.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
I'm not
do you
even gonna
do a wedding? You have a wedding? We need like a wedding and
2
2
deaths?
funerals.
Yeah.
2 funerals and a wedding. I think that's a British movie.
Funeral on Friday, but so this is a very depressing start.
And Christian Taylor.
Hi, how are you, Phil Fisher?
Good. I hit a deer over the
Yeah,
weekend.
tell me this story.
I hit a deer over the weekend.
Was it a big one?
Did you get to keep it?
There's really not that much more to the story.
You didn't take it home?
Deer. That's the beginning, the middle, and the end of the
Did
story.
you kill the deer?
I am going out on a limb and saying yes.
Did it dent your car?
Severely. Oh, yes.
Oh, really?
The car's messed up.
Could you keep driving?
We were going like 70 miles an hour. We were on the interstate, going 70 miles an hour in traffic, in the dark, in Wisconsin, where even the deers are drunk. And this deer pulled out right in front of me, going 70 miles an hour on the interstate, in traffic, in the dark, pulls out right in front of me, no blinker, no nothing, tries to cross, and he didn't quite. He almost made it. Aww. He almost made it. I saw him for about a second. Yeah.
Did he hit your windshield or the front of your car?
No, because we were in our SUV, fortunately, so he didn't go up and over and take our heads off. I think I hit his rump.
Oh, wow.
I think I hit deer rump, but we had fur stuck in the bumper.
I had a friend who hit a deer in college, and we ended up eating that deer for about the next week.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Can we change the subject?
Hey, it's a podcast. What do you know? Hey, it's a podcast. And we got video. Hey, it's a podcast. So lend an ear. The Phil Fisher podcast starts right here. Oh, we'll talk to Sky.
Hi, Phil.
Hi, Sky. That's the cheeriest greeting.
You seem so bored
Is that
with
because
this
we have a
theme
studio
song.
audience?
I'm just trying to turn it on.
That was cheery. And Christian, too.
Hi, Phil.
We've got a studio audience from all over America here for you.
That was pretty good.
Maybe the biggest studio audience we've ever had.
It is.
Well,
Hey, it's a podcast, so lend an ear. The Phil Fisher podcast starts right here. The Phil Fisher podcast hit a deer.
I'm going to post a picture of our studio audience.
Oh, that's good.
Right
Awesome.
now.
That's good. We're posting a picture of the studio audience, so if you're listening to this, you can
I'm
see.
going to take a selfie with the studio audience. Okay, everybody look in. 1,
Do
2,
we?
3.
I'm not in
You're
it.
not in
That's
it,
really
Sky.
not benefiting the audience at home at all.
Sorry, listeners.
In the news,
There's been a lot. Which one are you picking from?
here's a fun headline that you don't usually see in religion stories.
Lay it on me.
Religious ritual 1, chickens 0.
That doesn't sound good for the chicken.
Yes, this guy.
I'm wondering if this involves Chick-fil-A.
No,
Okay.
does not involve Chick-fil-A, but good guess.
Yeah. 'cause
Thank
I
you for
think
playing.
A lot of chickens have given their lives to the kingdom of God at Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, They line up and they march in the little chicken door in the back of the building.
And they lay down their life.
They come out redeemed.
So let me ask you, is this like in Asia or India?
No, this is in Brooklyn, New York.
Oh, gosh. Okay, this should be good. What happened?
The Alliance to End Chickens as Caporos, I don't know if that's how you pronounce that, asked the New York state courts to order local police to enforce public nuisance safety and health codes to prevent Orthodox Jews from engaging in kaparat. Kaparat.
You should know.
Why would I know?
Well, because it's got to
'Cause
be
you're
a Hebrew
practically
word.
Jew-
Yeah,
Jewish.
but no, I am not even practically anything. It's probably a Yiddish word, which is a long derivative.
Kaparat.
Whatever, I don't know.
The
F Hebrew.
annual ritual slaughter of barnyard chickens in Brooklyn.
Who's doing this?
Oh, the hipsters.
How many chickens are in Brooklyn?
They truck them in. They go to Chick-fil-A.
I don't think there's a Chick-fil-A in Brooklyn.
So Kaporat is performed in the 10 days between Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish
That's
New Year.
Rosh Hashanah.
Rosh Hashanah.
Thank you. And Yom Kippur.
That's Yom Kippur.
Yeah, you eat kippers in England, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we have a
Justin?
guest.
Yeah,
we
we have
forgot
a
to tell
guest.
everybody we have a guest.
Yeah, he has Yom Kippur's, yummy kippers for breakfast. Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement and the most holy day of the year to many Jews. In the ritual, men, women, and children,
They involve the kids?
it's fun for the whole family, swing a white chicken, a sign of purity, above their heads.
Alive?
Yes. So they swing a chicken.
By the feet, I'm assuming.
You swing a chicken.
Swing a chicken by the feet. It's like a barnyard dance.
How many different things could you swing a chicken by?
Their neck.
The neck or the
wing?
The feet.
One wing? That would be
tail.
That'd be crazy.
You can't swing a chicken by its tail.
Have you tried?
I haven't, but do you know what my dad used to tell me? His mother would send him out of the house at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, go ask him to catch a chicken in the yard and wring its neck.
Yeah, well, that's
and hang
how
it
people
upside
ate.
down.
Christian.
But my dad's only like 70 years old. And
Yeah, he grew up in the 1820s, and that's when they ate chickens.
No, he
now
grew up
we
in the
don't eat chickens anymore. We eat
1950s.
chicken nuggets.
True.
So it's a whole different thing.
Synthetic chicken.
Then the chicken is slaughtered in a kosher manner by slitting its throat. The meat or the monetary equivalent. Did you just ring your bell?
So they tortured the chicken, and then
don't say that because it's a religious ritual. So the alliance against this practice is called, it's a project of, I love this, the United Poultry Concerns.
Okay.
But they still call it poultry.
The United Poultry Concerns, which is an animal rights
Are you saying
organization
a
based
chicken
in
is
Virginia.
not poultry
No,
if
I'm
it's
saying
dead?
I always
And
think
if
of
it's alive?
poultry as
Chickens.
chicken meat.
No. Poultry is anything
Any
that
bird.
flies.
Why isn't it like
No.
United Aviary Concerns?
Because it's about poultry. No, it's birds that we eat, isn't it? Or is it just chickens?
That's
Oh
what I
boy,
mean.
we better.
Anyone-
Somebody in the audience look that up for us, please.
Some people are okay. We're
It's like,
googling
it'd be like saying we're going to create an organization to protect pigs, but we call it the United Pork Concern or whatever it is. But pork is not pigs. Pork is the meat of pigs. Get it?
I hear what you're saying.
Pork is a
I feel
nice,
you.
sweet meat.
I think
Who
I just-
said that? Who am I quoting?
I know, Babe. Pig in
the
the
mice.
City.
The
mice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank
And they
you.
were going to have duck l'orange.
No, it was from the first one, Babe.
Which would be a poultry
It was
concern.
the first one, not Pig in the City.
Right.
Not Pig in the City. Pig in the
Okay,
City
can we get this train
is
back
when
on the track?
Babe went to Brooklyn to swing chickens.
All right, back on the track.
Chicken swing dancing.
Back on the track.
Okay. So here's what the court said.
What the court
So the
say.
poultry concerns, the people for the poultry concerns filed suit to stop the kabarak of chickens.
Okay.
And the court said, although they may be upsetting to non-adherents of such a practice. Oh, someone's adding words to this. Although they may be upsetting to non-adherents of such a practice, the United States Supreme Court has recognized animal sacrifice as a religious sacrament and decided that it is protected under the Free Exercise Clause of the Constitution.
I don't quite get this story.
You can kill a chicken if you want to for your religion.
For religious reasons.
Or for food.
Right. So I mean, we kill animals at an alarming
Right,
rate.
but there's a little bit
But
of
not
torture
by
involved.
Not by swinging them.
Oh,
Right.
so this is the swinging that they object
Yeah,
to.
it's the swinging.
You know
If
what?
you're gonna swing a cow.
I would be much happier if somebody just swung me than if they slit my neck.
Yeah.
So I think the more offensive thing
Wait,
is the actual
well, but-
killing of the chicken rather than
but-
just the swinging of it.
Yeah, and they're probably also, I don't know that they're protesting just the swinging. I think the throat slitting.
Well,
But that's how you
it's
kill a
probably-
chicken.
But it's probably the whole point of it is
tell
that they're
the kids
probably
that.
angry that they're using these chickens for
religion.
For religion.
Yeah, like goat sacrifice in India.
Like it's okay to kill the chicken, just don't involve it in your worship.
You can
You can
kill it
eat
if
it.
you want to eat it.
Just don't eat it to
You
bring
can-
glory to any
you
kind
can
of deity.
Eat it,
that would
but
be
don't eat it symbolically.
Well, that would basically shut down every Chick-fil-A, wouldn't it? I say that I get animal rights activists. I actually admire many of them. I understand that there's a lot of cruelty to animals
Yes.
in the industrial farming and stuff like that. I get, but I don't understand this. Like, if you're gonna, like, these are people who are actually.
Does this seem like a weird hill to die on?
Yeah.
If you're a chicken,
Well, it
swung
just seems
chicken?
like this is actually the deindustrialization of animal food production.
Oh, okay.
It's very personal.
Yeah,
you
it's
actually know the
personal.
animal.
Yeah.
You have to look this thing in the eye before you kill it.
And name it.
And name
I
it.
name you Lucy. Hey, hey,
Hey,
hey,
that's my daughter's name.
Oh, I'm sorry. That brought it too close to home, didn't it?
That's what I think is like, if you're going to protest cruelty to animals, why don't you do one of these big industrial farms that, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Where the killing is impersonal.
So what we're saying is these people are really anti-religious.
I don't know what they are.
No, they're animal rights people, and they're looking for weird things done to animals, and they consider a whole bunch of Brooklynites swinging chickens around their heads that have to be trucked in, and then slitting their little chicken throats. Probably unnecessary.
I bet if this were happening in like rural Pennsylvania, they wouldn't care as much. But the fact that it's in Brooklyn, which is supposed to be like this.
What about Christians swinging snakes around their heads?
Well, yeah, but then they have it. They're asking for it.
Yeah, they are, and they usually get it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I thought it was interesting because it's in Brooklyn. You know,
exactly. That's what makes it interesting.
Makes an interesting story.
Right.
Thousands of chickens a year.
Fascinating.
Thousands of chickens a year get swung and slit.
I bet they're delicious.
In
What
Brooklyn.
What is the point of this ritual? It's a purity ritual.
It's a cupperat.
No, I know the name of it.
Cupperat, Christian.
But
Cupperat.
what's the point of it?
I wonder if this is something that developed after the temple was destroyed, and they weren't sacrificing a lamb anymore at the temple, and then disparate Jews said, "Okay, we're going to use white chickens now."
It's a sign of purity.
Yeah.
They pray for their sins to be transferred to the chicken.
That's it.
So it's a scapegoat.
It's a scapegoat.
It's a scapegoat chicken.
It's a scape chicken.
Because it's hard to swing a goat around your head, especially for the young
Well, they
ones.
certainly have departed from the Old Testament.
Well, they don't have
rules.
a temple anymore.
They don't have a temple.
Well, I know
what
they don't
would
have
you do
an-
if you didn't have a temple?
If you didn't have a goat and you didn't have a temple, you'd swing a chicken.
Yeah,
That's
but guess
you
what
would
I would do? If I didn't have a goat and if I didn't have a temple, I would certainly go back to the rules of the Torah and I would figure out what the sacrificial rules are and sacrifice it somewhere
You are
symbolic.
accusing the Orthodox Jews of Brooklyn of not knowing their Torah.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, boy.
You know what? If they want to do it the Brooklyn way, they should get some, I don't know, white canvas Tom shoes and swing them over their head.
Yeah,
And then
they need to be
Throw it
hipster
up on a wire?
chickens.
Yeah, and then
Hipster
buy an
chickens
extra
with
pair for someone
little
poor.
beards and glasses, and then they serve them in hipster restaurants, locally sourced.
Right.
They're local. Eat local, pray global. Justin, do they swing chickens in the UK?
Not as far as I know, but who knows what's going on,
Yeah.
places that we're not aware of. But I mean, I think I'd take Sky's point, actually, that the reason people protest is because when you actually do something, that's in the open and it kind of gets you involved with the animals, I think people don't like the idea. We're kind of more comfortable when it's out of sight, out of mind, even if we're probably worse things are happening than chickens getting swung around someone's head, to be honest. So
Yeah, and maybe the chickens enjoy that part. Maybe they're at that point they're thinking, "Hey, this is turning out to be a pretty good day."
I'm going to go out on a limb and think that no, they don't at all.
Really?
They don't enjoy that. No,
Because it's almost flying.
they're not going to
You're
enjoy
projecting,
that.
Christian.
Hey, I'm almost
You don't
flying.
know that.
I know that for a fact.
Think about the rush of blood to their head. That must be euphoric for the chicken.
Yeah, euphoric. And
Okay,
then out
we
their
need a
throat.
new news
All
story.
I can
Seriously,
say is
let's
this
move on.
episode, between you hitting this deer, the chickens being swung, and the moose heads behind you, Phil, I don't think the animal rights lovers are going to be into this.
He's got a point.
Well,
He does have a point. We should move on to the next
not
story.
one of our target groups. I was going to bring this up last week, but our friend Ed Stetzer, I was on the radio with Ed last week.
I saw that on Twitter, actually.
You did?
I did.
Yeah. Ed Stetzer is filling in for Janet Parshall. Janet Parshall has a radio show on Moody, which goes all across the country, like 300 radio stations, and she's going to Israel because I don't know if you know about this, but that's where it all started.
I've heard that.
The Jesus thing started in Israel.
I heard it.
So she was going to Israel for 2 weeks.
Wow.
2 weeks. So Ed Stetzer, our friend, is filling in on the radio, so he had me on the radio.
What'd you talk about?
He was also in the news. Do you know what we ended up talking about?
There is no telling.
Veggie Tales.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
That's so old news.
I know.
They just can't move on.
I know. I feel like I've been there. Been there. Done that. Anyway, he got some feedback. He blogs for Christianity Today.
Yes, he does.
He tweets like a madman.
Yes, he does.
He actually insulted my tweeting while I was there on the radio.
Saying that you're a terrible tweeter.
Yeah.
He
'cause you
shamed
are.
me into tweeting.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
At
he
a restaurant,
tweets-
at a hotel restaurant in Arizona.
Yeah. He
Somewhere between you
prolific.
and Ed is probably a good balance. And you're pretty close.
somewhere between
you.
me
To the middle.
and Ed is Donald Trump.
Don't even go there.
What?
We don't need to.
Well, Ed tweets twice as much as Trump, and I tweet half as much
here's the
as Trump.
difference is
so
Ed's-
put me and Ed together, you get Donald Trump. Divide
Ed's
by 2.
tweets are coherent and probably won't cause an international incident.
Okay, well, this one might. Ed, this wasn't a tweet, this was a blog post. Ed Stetzer is calling Christians to repent. Now, that's kind of an old tradition. That's not new. People
Repenting?
calling Christians to repent.
I got in trouble once
But
for that
here's
one.
what he's calling it, and he's not calling them to repent for swinging chickens or anything involving animal rights. Repent of spreading conspiracy theories and fake news.
Well, then what are they going to do?
share the gospel. People love, this is Ed talking, people love to speculate on hidden meanings or to jump to at the potential of juicy secrets. Unfortunately, when these things are unfounded, lies are told and people are hurt. And most unfortunately, Christians are often involved in perpetuating them. And now I notice that many of the same conservative Christians who shared about Pizzagate, you remember Pizzagate?
I do.
The pizza restaurant was it in Washington?
It was in New York.
New York? Was it?
I thought that was a newfangled deal from Pizza Hut.
At the no.
With the cheese and the crust.
That Hillary Clinton was somehow funding a child sex ring out of the basement of a pizza restaurant.
Which doesn't actually have a basement.
Well, when has that gotten in our way of coming up with a great story about what's going on in someone's basement? Now they've been spreading the Seth Rich conspiracy theory, the guy who was killed, the Democratic National Committee employee who was murdered, and the theory was, it has something to do with the emails.
But the police are saying it was probably just a bad robbery.
It was a burglar.
Yeah.
It was a burglar, but we love it. We love conspiracy theories, especially when they make Democrats look bad. Those are our favorite conspiracy theories. And we're all over this. So Ed Stetzer is saying, simply put, the spreading of these conspiracies are hurting our witness and making Christians look yet again foolish, and it's time to repent.
Have you heard about the new flap about Megyn Kelly and NBC News?
I haven't read it. There's something flapping.
So she's interviewing Jones. What's his first name? The guy from...
Alex
Jones.
Yeah.
She's interviewing him for her new program. And people are boycotting and protesting because he's put forward that conspiracy theory that the Sandy Hook school shooting that happened a couple years ago, where those first graders, it's just the worst story in history. He's saying it was all fake, and the kids weren't real, and the parents were all actors, and it was all a conspiracy on the part of anti-gun advocates, blah blah blah. And so people are genuinely and rightfully upset that they're giving him any kind of platform to be interviewed. But the thing that you got to take a step back and go, millions of people listen to this, and they apparently on some level believe it.
Right.
And they don't factor how painful this is to the families and the victims and the people who are hurt by these genuine tragedies, including this young man.
Well, it was Seth Rich's parents who finally were like, enough is enough.
Yes.
But people make money doing this. That's what's so disturbing. So they keep doing it.
Ed jumps in. You got to admire Ed for his...
He jumps right in the middle of those phrases.
In fact, he tweaked a couple people when he was on our show because he was jumping in
he did.
So aggressively. He's a fun guy. He loves to jump in. So he posted this, and of course people get back to him and give him the reasons why it's not a sin to spread the stories about Seth.
Because they're saying they're true?
If they're false, and so Ed actually gives the reasons they give why it's okay. And then he responds to them. The usual defenses that were posted. If the story is false, why are people working so hard to cover it up? And Ed says, it's false, and people are telling you that it's false. Second one.
Answer.
But shouldn't we investigate it to find out for sure if it's false? Ed's answer, yes, police are, and you should not spread lies while they do. Answer 3, well, what about Russiagate? They're doing it to us too. Ed says, stop redirecting and making excuses to bear false witness. And then finally, but isn't the media unfair to President Trump? And Ed says, yes, but that does not justify you bearing false witness.
Well, that sounds very reasonable.
And then Ed closes by saying, those are excuses. The main reason for many is simply that they do this because they hate Hillary Clinton. I asked Ed if he was going to talk about this story while he was filling in for Janet Parshall.
I'm guessing he didn't.
On Moody Radio, and he said probably not.
Right.
Well, I think a lot of it, too, is not really knowing who to trust anymore. For example, I saw a story. It's like the genesis of a fake news article, and they're usually very hard to track, but somewhere in the story they were able to track one of them and how it got all the way into the mainstream media. And it was from Russia, and it was them taking truths of a story that had happened.
Yep.
And then, but it was several years before, and it wasn't the exact same story. They tweaked it. They rewrote it with today's players or whatever.
Get a new picture.
They get a new picture, brush it up.
Bada boom, bada bing.
And then put it on Facebook.
Put it on Facebook.
And then when it went from Facebook to whatever, and then Fox News picked it up. But the thing is, even when you go to research things, a lot of times they just reference the fake news stuff.
Yeah.
So it genuinely...
You know, we propagated fake news. I propagated fake news 2 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
The story of the pastor walking on water and being eaten by crocodiles.
No.
Yeah. But that was very entertaining.
It was not true.
Didn't happen.
It didn't happen. It was fake news. Did you hear about that story?
I did, yeah. In fact, a friend of mine actually blogged on fake news and the way that lots of people are taken in by these things.
Oh, see, the British, they're above it.
They're a step ahead of us.
We did a whole episode, well, we did a whole, I should say, edition of our magazine where we looked at fake news, and we had to come up with a load of Christian fake news for the title. We put lots of headlines on there.
Oh, okay.
Including God Delusion books withdrawn from sale following Richard Dawkins conversion. And Sir David Attenborough and Rick Warren joined forces to create the porpoise-driven life and this kind of thing. So it was just there were some just that were bad puns, to be fair, but it is equally an issue over here. You know, there's no doubt that lots of people get either taken in or just don't bother looking into it, or just because it suits their own agenda, they'll share it on. You know.
Yeah.
It is the international language of stupidity.
So anyway,
I want to add one nuance to Ed's explanation.
Nuance, yes.
He says people do it because they hate Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that.
I agree with you.
Okay.
I think it's people feel disempowered, like they can't really make a difference on what's going on, and they feel like spreading these articles, putting them on their social media, forwarding them via email, gives them a sense of empowerment that I'm doing my small part to make America great again, or to combat whatever evil they think they're combating.
Yeah.
And so it isn't just that they have this vile hatred of some political character, it's I want to participate. I want to help whatever is wrong in the country, and this is my small way of doing it. And so it involves them and gives them that gratification that you're doing your part to uphold righteousness or whatever. So it isn't merely a hate motivation, it's I want to do something constructive.
But it's also
but it's stupid.
That we've lost faith in the media and in the expert class, you know, in the elites. We don't believe them anymore. So we have to turn to somewhere for our news. So we turn to
but
our
the irony in that is we're turning to a different set of elites who are exploiting our stupidity to make money. But that's the irony of it.
But they agree with us. Wouldn't you rather have the elite that agrees with you than the elite that thinks you're dumb?
No, I'd actually rather have the truth.
Oh, what is this?
The problem is nobody feels like you can get to the truth anymore.
Yeah.
And that it's, you know, and everybody is guarding what they feel is the truth.
Yeah.
And so if you show me something different, you have an agenda and you're just trying to tear me down.
All right.
That's what's...
You know we have a guest?
We're not going to solve this, that's for sure.
It's time for our guest.
Moving into a new segment?
Yeah. I thought we needed a palate cleanser. A sorbet.
Wonderful.
A ukulele sorbet, which is delicious if you've ever had it, but you can only get it in Hawaii. Served from Don Ho's coconut. Justin Brierley is here. Where's Justin?
Hi.
Oh, there he is.
Hi, Justin.
And Justin, if I'm reading your bio right, you are the last Christian left in England.
That's right. It's just me and my little family clinging on to the last bastion of...
It's like Noah.
He's Noah.
Well, we do have... Our oldest son is called Noah, so that is quite appropriate.
Whoa! That's fantastic.
There you go.
Justin...
No, it's not as bad as all that, Phil. It's, you know, there's still a few of us left here.
Okay, you keep telling yourself that. Justin is the king of Christian media in the UK. He's the editor of Premier Christian Magazine. He's the host of the Unbelievable radio show and podcast and live events. And have you done a cruise yet? Have you done an Unbelievable cruise?
No, but I like your thinking there, Phil. That's another product to add to the growing range of unbelievable things. Yes.
Yeah, I'm here to help. And he's been doing this radio show for 10 years, and we're big fans. We've talked about him before.
He's been on this show before.
Yeah, he has. Twice.
Is this your third appearance?
Yeah, this is his third time.
Although this is the first time I've been here when he's been here.
Really?
So, yeah.
There you go.
That's because
it's
asks...
lovely to make your acquaintance.
Lovely
Christian.
to make yours as well.
I hear your voice so often on my iPod. So it's lovely to see you.
And lovely to see you too.
He wrote a book. Justin wrote a book because he just didn't have enough to do. When you're single-handedly trying to sustain Christian England, you have to work really hard. His new book is called Unbelievable.
You make him out to be like the new Winston Churchill.
He is. He's Winston. Never give up, never surrender. We will cling. We will fight them in the churches. We will fight them in the pubs. We will fight them at Oxford where the dinosaurs are. I was just reading his account of the debate between Lennox and Dawkins.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I was reading that in your book.
That's I mean, I don't claim anything as lofty as being the savior of Christianity here in the UK, that's for sure. But I'm trying to do my little bit in my corner.
Yes, and that's exactly what Churchill said, I believe.
that wonderful British understatement.
Yes, I'm just doing my little bit.
I'm wondering just how many English accents you're going to be putting on during the talk.
All of them, I'm hoping, before it's done.
So, can you finish with his bio, please?
I actually don't have.
Never going to get through this podcast.
I don't have his bio. I just. I'm doing this from memory because he's his biggest fan. I'm his biggest fan. Because there's this great tradition of British Christian thinkers.
Right.
And, and he has to keep it going and he needs to find the next generation, which is actually one of my questions for him. Like, because, you start, if you go back to Chesterton and then you go to Lewis, and now we've got, Alistair McGrath and we've got John Lennox, but they're all getting a little up in years.
Os Guinness.
Yeah, but he came over here.
I know, but
here now.
He's kind of a...
Just because he has an accent doesn't mean he's carrying on the tradition.
I think he is.
Do you consider Tolkien in that class?
He was in
the writers. He was
friends.
in the
he was friends with that class.
Yeah.
Today? I'm jumping right to a question that has nothing to do with your book.
We should probably talk about his book, though.
I know, but we will, and we will. We definitely will.
Yeah.
For at least a minute and a half. Who's the next generation? Because you've had so many people on your radio show, you've had so many people on your cruises to the Bahamas, you've had so many people in all. Who do you say, hey, wow, this guy's good, this girl's good, this is they're ready to pick up the mantle?
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about the sort of the intellectual tradition of Christianity, I mean, there's still plenty of life left in some of those people you mentioned. Alistair McGrath, he produces X many books a year and is a superb mind, So there's people like him. But there are some great young up-and-coming Christian philosophers and
Give us two that we should start following. Okay,
all right, let me see. Well, I'm friends with a guy called Tom Price, who is part of the Oxford Centre for Christian Apologetics. He's a great speaker. Let me see. I would also heartily recommend one or two of the people who have been on my show and at the conference recently. Andy Bannister, if you haven't come across him, he was actually just in Canada until last year and came back over.
Okay.
And he's a great thinker, a great communicator. If you haven't read it yet, he's got a book called The Atheist Who Didn't Exist. And it's really funny, which I think is really important these days. I think these days you have to communicate with a little bit of humor in order to get your message across.
Right.
But it's also very sharp, very incisive. So
Phil hasn't gotten that memo.
Those are two guys, and there's many of up-and-coming women as well who are leading the field as well. So
Well, I'll tell you what.
Give us one. Come on, give us one.
On the biblical side, I'm a huge fan of Paula Gooder. If you've never had her on, Phil, you should really get her on.
How do you spell her name?
Gooder, Gooder. And I kind of think I know it's wrong to describe a female Bible scholar in male terms, but if there were a female Tom Wright, she would kind of be the female Tom Wright for me.
Oh, okay. Is she cuter than Tom Wright?
Stop it. That is so chauvinistic.
I'm sorry. Well, Tom's not all that cute.
She was actually kind of taught by him at Oxford, and so in one sense she would freely say she is his protege in some ways, but she's brilliant in her own right as well.
Okay.
So she's a New Testament scholar.
She is, yes, she is. That's right.
Anthropologuda.
So, can I ask him a question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it about his book?
It is.
Oh, good. Okay, go.
Okay, so you wrote a book. It's called Unbelievable. It's your first
Wait,
book.
I have to give the whole title.
Oh, please, go ahead.
The whole title is a long subtitle.
I just get dibs on the first question.
Unbelievable why, after 10 years of talking with atheists, I'm still a Christian.
Excellent.
That's the whole title.
That's the one. Thank you.
Okay, so I was reading through your book. My favorite chapter was chapter 8.
Wow, you got that far. I'm impressed.
Not exactly that far. I did kind of pick and choose, but anyway, I would love to hear you talk about your 3-minute conversation with Richard Dawkins, or 10 minutes, I think it was.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like you got him to a very interesting place. So I'm going to let you just set that up.
Yeah, well, this is going back quite early, actually, in the life of the show. You know, probably this was 2008, something like that. And I'd been wanting to have Richard Dawkins on my show because, you know, a couple of years previous to that, obviously, The God Delusion had come out, international bestseller. And I just hadn't been able to get hold of him through his publisher or any other means to come on the show.
He's a leading atheist. We have to say that for people who don't know.
The leading atheist.
He is a leading atheist, continues to be really the face of modern atheism in many ways. And so the opportunity arose in the end because he was having a debate in Oxford with the aforementioned John Lennox, who's also an Oxford professor, but he's obviously a Christian and a very good Christian communicator. It was the second of a series of debates that were being hosted by an organization called the Fixed Point Foundation, and they'd chosen to have it in the Natural History Museum in Oxford. So it was a very grand occasion with these massive dinosaur skeletons in the back, you know, in the background of their debates, and the place was packed out. Well, anyway, I decided I was going to try and get an interview with him afterwards, and I had been invited to the sort of reception after show party sort of thing. So once the sort of the press gathering was over after the debate, I decided to make my way down the road there, and who should I happen to be walking alongside than Richard Dawkins himself. He was pushing his bike. Most people get around by a bike in Oxford, and down to the same place. So I sort of introduced myself and said, hello, I'm Justin. I'm hoping to get a little interview with you once we're there. And he said, oh, okay, yes. Where are you from? And I explained I was from a Christian radio station. And he looked a little bit, wary at this point. He wasn't quite sure about that. And had a little bit of a grumble about the fact that, yes, you probably have charity status, whereas his Richard Dawkins Foundation had trouble getting charity status, apparently. But anyway, we sort of had some pleasantries, got to the thing, and then at some point later on in the evening, while the hubbub was going on in this busy reception, I did manage to rock up with my microphone in hand and have a little conversation with him. And we really just sort of talked about what he'd debated with John Lennox during the course of that particular debate. One element of our conversation that actually got picked up by quite a few channels and blogs and things like that was where we got to talking about what sometimes in apologetics is called the moral argument, and whether we believe that things really are right and wrong, that there's an objective standard that we're all called to emulate and to live up to, or whether it's all just an illusion, really. Morality is just the result of our genes, our DNA, our evolution, and there's no such thing really as right and wrong. And those who would say there is such a thing as an objective moral standard, right and wrong, would say you can only really get that if there's something beyond just this material world, that there is a moral lawgiver, if you like. So that was kind of the kind of where our conversation was coming from. In fact, I kind of reproduced the moment where we have this interesting exchange in the book. I'll just read it out so I can represent it accurately. And we've been talking about the example, not a very nice example, but the example of rape. And I've said, if we'd evolve into a society where rape was considered fine, would that mean that rape is fine? And he responds, well, I don't want to answer that question. It's enough for me to say that we live in a society where it's not considered fine. We live in a society where selfishness, failure to pay your debts, failure to reciprocate favors is regarded askance. That is the society in which we live. I'm very glad. That's a value judgment. Glad that I live in such a society. And I responded, but when you make a value judgment, don't you yourself immediately step outside this evolutionary process and say that the reason this is good is that it's good, and you don't have any way to stand on that statement? And he responded, my value judgment itself could come from my evolutionary past. And I responded, well, therefore, in a sense, it's just as random as any product of evolution. And he said, you could say that. In any case, nothing about it makes it more probable that there's anything supernatural. And I said, okay, but ultimately, your belief that rape is wrong is as arbitrary as the fact that we've evolved 5 fingers rather than 6. And he said, you could say that, yeah. And that was just an interesting admission. The conversation sort of moved on at that point. And but for me, that was, I'm not into like big gotcha moments exactly, but at the same time, it was quite revealing, I think, that ultimately, if you do believe that everything we think and feel and believe is a result of a completely unguided process of evolution, then yeah, you have to be committed to the view that some of our most deeply held moral beliefs are in a sense arbitrary as any element of evolution. There's nothing really right and wrong about these things. It's just the way we happen to have evolved. It's the happenstance of our evolutionary history.
Well, he seemed comfortable with that.
Yeah, I think, though, he wasn't. And I think the reason he wasn't was, as he said, when I said, so if we had evolved, when I began that part, if we'd evolved into a society where it was considered fine, would that mean rape is fine? And he said, I don't want to answer that question, because I think he's obliged to say, well, of course it would be fine if that's the way we'd evolved, that would just be the way it is. But he doesn't like to think of that scenario from his present position. But I think he just has to admit at some level that would be how it would have to be. There's no way around it, really.
Doesn't that make the current moral dilemmas we face on a global scale kind of troubling? Because how do you find the moral integrity to say to another culture, the way you treat women is wrong?
You're doing it wrong.
Right.
You need to do it like we do it.
Yeah.
But we do that all the time. It's our moral colonialism, imperialism.
Well, and that's what a lot of people react to, is they've seen colonialism do great harm.
Yeah.
But they've thrown the baby out with the bathwater by saying, well, then everything is fine. It's all arbitrary. It's just cultural differences. But then you look at certain societies and the way they treat the poor, the way they treat women, or the way they treat anybody who's seen as marginalized or disenfranchised, whatever. And what moral authority do we have to stand up and say that's wrong? No, you should educate women, or genital mutilation is immoral and wrong. You can't do that if you have Richard Dawkins' philosophy of morality.
I'd agree with that, Sky. And I think for me, many of the atheists I know are among the most moral people I know. And they will, be on the marches for equality and for all of the things that they will stand up for. But I just find it doesn't cohere well with very, very many of them who say then that actually all morality is subjective. Because if that's true, as you say, what right have we to tell anyone what they ought to be doing? That's just the way they developed. It's not as though there's some goal that we all should be aiming for. There isn't any ultimate goal on a kind of naturalistic, atheistic sort of way of looking at it.
Right. You end up deteriorating into a Nietzschean sort of view that all there is the will to power, and whoever has power gives you the right to impose your morality.
Well, and I think that's interesting in light of sort of the animal world that they say we evolved from or alongside or whatever, because in that world, might is right, the strong wins. And there is rape that we see in the animal culture or even in other cultures that aren't civilized. So why does he think that we as a civilized people have developed this morality where in the natural world it's not there?
He doesn't know, but he's glad we did. Ha ha, getting on my bike. Ta-ta.
But it's ironic that in a sense, one of his, going back 80 years or whatever in Oxford, C.S. Lewis, it was this very argument which was the turning point for him, not bringing him all the way to Christianity, but certainly to belief in God, was that he couldn't make sense of his moral beliefs in justice. While at the same time claiming there was no such thing in the world. It only made sense for him to rail against the injustices of the universe. As he said, how is a man to call a line crooked unless he has some idea of a straight line? There had to be some standard out there which we're appealing to if we're going to rail against evil and suffering. Even even if we're railing against God, there's still a sense in which there has to be some kind of a standard by which we're judging God by in order to be angry with him.
Right. To reject God, you're holding him to some standard.
That's the way I would see it. And for me, that's always been quite a powerful argument. I mean, I spend one of the chapters of the book actually making the case for God from human value, the fact that we all it seems to become enshrined in many parts of Western culture that humans have this intrinsic value. We draw up whole sets of human rights to enshrine those in documents and so on. And yet we never often stop to think, well, why have we privileged humans over any other part of the natural world? And it doesn't really make much sense to do that unless you really think there's something special that goes beyond simply our biology and our genes and our DNA, and that there's something actually intrinsically valuable about humans.
Right.
And the Christian has a ready explanation for that. We're made in the image of God. But I don't see that a naturalist atheist perspective really can make sense of why we would happen to privilege our species above all others in that kind of way.
So let me back up. Go to the beginning. You wrote a book. The book's called Unbelievable: Why After 10 Years of Talking with Atheists, I'm Still a Christian. Why did you write it? What's the purpose? What are you hoping to accomplish with the book that you're not accomplishing on your radio show or through your celebrity cruises to the Bahamas?
Well, I'm hoping just to get a couple more people in the UK to become Christians alongside me, Phil,
because the Ark is awfully lonely.
It's got a few different purposes. Partly it's written for the unbelievable audience because, in 11 plus years of doing the show now, there's a lot of people listening around the world. And it's kind of a way of telling the story of the show. I kind of do that in the first chapter or two and recounting some of the backstage scenes and that kind of thing. But it's also a way of me, I think, stepping out from my usually neutral moderator role on the program, where I'm hosting these discussions and debates between Christians and non-Christians.
Yeah.
Saying, well, look, one of the most common questions I've had in those 10 years is, how come you still believe, Justin? What's your case for faith after hearing all of these objections and arguments for and against? So this is really my book saying this is where I come down at this point, why I think Christianity is a better explanation for life, the universe and everything than an atheistic one. And I tried to do that by obviously drawing on lots of those conversations that have been had in the show across over 10 years.
So do you feel after 10 years of those conversations, do you feel more convinced that you...
I think there are... You see, is that I feel more confident in some respects and less confident in others. Because I think inevitably anyone who looks into mysterious things, it finds even more mysterious things to get, confused by or not know the answer to and so on. So it sounds a bit arrogant to say, oh yes, after 10 years I come out far more confident than I went in.
Yeah.
But I think there are some things that I have learned the value of, just how much good evidence we have for certain aspects of what we think and feel and do and scripture and so on.
What are a couple of traditional things that you grew up with that you now hold more firmly because of what you have learned, and what are a couple that you hold a little more loosely because of all these conversations?
I think that the resurrection of Jesus Christ, that's something which growing up I believe I sort of took on, if you like, quote unquote faith, not realizing that there's also some pretty good objective evidence for why it might make sense to believe that a resurrection really was the reason for the birth of the church, and why a physical resurrection actually is quite important in the big scheme of things, why that would make sense, that it's not just some people having some strange inward experiences necessarily. So there's things like that where I'd say I've moved towards a more concrete, more confident understanding of that aspect of the Christian worldview. There are other areas where I think I can see lots of different perspectives, and I'm not at this point sort of happy to say I definitely land here, there, or wherever. The creation evolution debate. That's a huge area, many different places to land potentially on a whole spectrum.
Right.
But not one where I feel like I have a massive stake. It's not a hill I'm particularly willing to die on any one of those particular perspectives.
Yeah.
I'm happy to know that we're here. God was behind it somehow. Things have gone wrong, but and Jesus came to sort it out, basically.
You also talked about that your views have been shaped a bit on topics like heaven and hell.
That's right.
Which is, some of those things you adopt a view or you inherit a view not really realizing how little you actually know about it, and whether the view you've inherited is from the Bible or from Renaissance paintings on a certain topic. And you do write about that your views on heaven and hell have, would you say, matured, changed? How would you put it?
Yeah, I definitely say that in the course of doing various discussions and debates on the nature of heaven and hell in particular, I suppose, I've moved towards and embraced to some extent what is sometimes called, annihilationism or conditional immortality. And I think you guys did an episode on that a while back, didn't you?
Yeah, we did.
And for me, that's a view which I've come to see the scriptural foundations for are actually a lot stronger than many people have ever given them credit for, because I think people do grow up very often in an environment maybe where it's just taken as read that the sort of the eternal conscious torment view, as it's called, is the natural reading of scripture. And actually, when you go back and look at it, maybe with those that kind of focus taken off, you realize that it's not necessarily there at all. And secondly, for me, just at a kind of philosophical and theological level, it kind of ties in more with how I would kind of conceive the nature of what it means to reject God. Because for me, rather like C.S. Lewis, I hold the view that God doesn't send us to hell for having the wrong beliefs, as it were. I think if anyone who doesn't choose God, God gives them what they want. The doors are bolted from the inside, as Lewis says. Ultimately, I'm not here to stand in judgment over who is and isn't, but at the end of the day, I believe I believe God wants everyone to be saved, but that people will choose to reject him. And for me, if you choose to reject yourself from the source of life, from the ground of all being, then it's a natural corollary of that, if you like, that will mean an ultimate end. So for me, it kind of, the scripture and my own kind of intuition about God and the nature of life and death seem to come together at that point. Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe everyone will make it in the end, in a kind of Rob Bell-esque way. But that's not quite where I've managed to find myself. It doesn't feel to me like everyone's going to say yes at some point.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I would just like you to say corollary again.
I don't think I can say that. Corollary.
Corollary.
Now say aluminium.
Isn't that a Toyota?
Corollary.
I think it is. Okay, we need to wrap up. We don't have a ton more time. But over the 10 years, what keeps you going back into difficult conversations, and sometimes, as you would describe them, sparky conversations over and over again every Saturday afternoon? Why do you keep going back?
I don't know. It pays the bills. I mean, honestly, I really enjoy it. I know I'm probably kind of a geek and a nerd, and to be honest, that's the way a lot of people who are in apologetics are. But what I like about it is not so much going over that particular debate again, but actually getting those two people in to talk about that issue, because it's often the individuals that make it the most interesting. And so when you get to really interesting different perspectives, then that makes for a really interesting, new dynamic on a maybe a quite familiar topic. But I'm always finding new stuff to talk about. You never run out.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys know that from doing a podcast. But
I don't know. Sometimes we struggle.
The world keeps handing us new stories.
Swinging chickens and all.
But there's, I've always got a list longer than I have time for.
Okay, how often, what percentage of the time, this is my last question, maybe, do the two people that you've brought in, if they don't know each other, do they walk out at the end feeling more hostile toward each other or less hostile and maybe even friendly toward each other? What do you see more often?
Maybe about 10 to 20%, maybe more hostile. And the vast majority, I think, have a pretty friendly interaction, and they're kind of happy to talk and chat and swap emails and keep in touch afterwards. You do get those ones which are definitely more, as you say, sparky.
As you say,
for saying,
and I'm curious, does a conflict occur more when you have a believer and a non-believer on? But you do a lot of shows where it's between two Christians of differing doctrinal points of view. Is that which are more contentious?
Probably the believer, non-believer ones, or the ones with a Christian and someone of another faith, like a Muslim.
Okay.
And to be honest, the Christians tend to when it's an inter-theological discussion, tend to be quite polite because, they want
I was wondering about that. I was wondering, were the Christians going to be polite? Because that just is terrible to me if they're the ones at fault for being sparky.
Well, I think it's one of the things that's great about your program, and I'm sure about your book as well, is you give everyone a fair shot. Like, it's not set up to be. I'm thinking
it's not an ambush.
The difference between Unbelievable and God's Not Dead, where the atheistic point of view in God's Not Dead is really a stereotype, and it's just set up as a straw man and then knocked over. Whereas Unbelievable, you really respect and honor the people who have differing points of view and give them equal time and equal opportunity to make their points. And I just think it's a far more respectful way to engage in these important conversations.
Yeah. So here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do. If you would like to try out Justin's new book for free, we will give you the first chapter. That's right. The first chapter, even free in pounds as well as in dollars. It's free. If you go to philvischer.com and go to the show notes on this episode, you can get it there. Or you can text Justin Book to 44222. And you can get a free download of the first chapter, and then hopefully you'll like it, and then you'll buy his book, and Justin can have a nickel. I think it's one word. Yeah, it has to be one word, I think, if you text it Justin Book. Justin Book to 44222. Okay. You do talk in your book a little bit about the new atheism. The Dawkins movement seems to be losing a little energy. People have kind of, like, the shtick is getting old. You're seeing that in the UK. I know we're seeing that in the US as well.
I think people are tired of kind of brash fundamentalism, whether it's coming from Christians or from atheists. And the movement here is towards things like the Sunday Assembly, which is kind of more of a atheists getting together in something rather like church, where they, where they celebrate.
Sing Kumbaya.
Yeah, and where they're not just known for what they're against. I think generally it's acknowledged that there's only so much energy you can expend on kind of being angry with people.
Yeah. I don't know if you know this, but we have our mutual friend, Dr. Peter Boghossian, who I'm still in touch with after 3 or 4 years since he's been on our show, and he was on your show as well. He's pretty much now stopped doing atheism as a pursuit. He's still an atheist, but he's
not evangelizing.
He has told me he's really gotten tired of the attitude of his brethren.
And he wrote a book called A Manual for Making Atheists.
A Manual for Creating Atheists.
But he's given up.
He's not going to pursue that anymore. He just doesn't.
Well, are you aware of the latest thing, though? The latest controversy he got into?
Yes.
The latest what?
Oh, stop it. Yes, you're so darling. You and
controversy?
You're from Mississippi, of all people. I don't think you should be giving him lessons on proper English.
No, I just love it. I want to learn it.
Yeah, he wrote a piece with another friend of his who's also a fairly rabid atheist, who's also sort of giving up that pursuit. And they wrote a piece on a parody piece on gender norms. Which I won't get into the details because it's a little off color, and then they wanted to see if they could get it printed in a peer-reviewed, what they would describe as a leftist gender journal, and they succeeded. And they said their goal was, and they went back and reread the piece to make sure that it said absolutely nothing that made sense, but that it used catchphrases from gender studies.
So they were kind of poking the eye of the...
punked. They punked a major academic journal, and they wrote it under fake names. They changed their names, and it was peer-reviewed and published. And then they came out and said that the whole thing was a hoax, and it was nonsense, utter nonsense that they made up. And he says he's got all sorts of people mad at him now.
Yeah, well, that's lots of people within his own camp, we're not too happy about that either. But it was an interesting one. He likes to put the cat among the pigeons, doesn't he?
That's nicely put. But doesn't that kind of make our point from earlier?
Churchill said.
The erosion of trust in experts is because of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's
That is
clear
true.
they have more of an agenda than they're interested in the truth.
Yeah, all right. I'm going to wrap it up. How do people follow you when you're all the way over there in your ark in London?
Well, if you want to check out the show itself and subscribe to the podcast, premierchristianradio.com/unbelievable. That's the place to go. You can ding me if you like. Thank you. And the book is also available via Amazon. We've got a website for it, unbelievable.book.co.uk. But go to your website and you can get the free chapter download, even better. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Let me try to summarize this. What did we talk about?
Good luck.
Justin Brierley's doing a lot of good. He's talking to the atheists like Jesus says we should. And don't you think he's just about the friendliest guy you've ever seen who loves to talk to atheists? Now he wrote a book. I hope that everybody takes a look because it hopefully will help you know how to talk to your enemies as well as it can go when Justin Brierley from his ark in London shows us what fun it is to eat a Funyun when you're the only Christian in England. All right.
Woo!
Thanks for being on the show, Justin. We hope you have you back again soon. The book is Unbelievable. Why after 10 years of talking with atheists, I'm still a Christian. And you can get a free copy by going to our show notes.
No, a free copy of the first chapter.
Yeah. Potato. We will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye, everybody.
Oh!
Hey, there's our audience.
The Phil Fisher Podcast is produced by Phil Fisher Enterprises and recorded live at Jellyfish Lab Studios. This episode was edited by Jason Rugg and was fact-checked by absolutely no one. For more information, go to philfisher.com.